Woohoo! Welcome back to Shifts and Giggles, Conversations with Beth, where we explore the shifts that shake us up, wake us up, and often lead us exactly where we're meant to be. Today's guest knows a thing or two about life-changing shifts. A few years ago, Shveta Vikram found herself on a cancer watch list. It was a frightening and deeply transformative experience that invited her to take a closer look at what true healing really means. While conventional medicine provided important tools and support, she discovered it wasn't the whole story for her. That experience led her back to Ayurveda, the ancient healing science of India, and ultimately toward a calling she could no longer ignore. Today, Shveta is an Ayurvedic doctor trained by some of the most respected teachers in the field. She's also a Columbia University graduate who brings together the best of Eastern wisdom and Western understanding to help people restore their energy, reduce stress, improve gut health, and create lives that are both successful and sustainable. What I love about Shveta's approach is that she understands the realities of modern life. Having navigated corporate burnout, entrepreneurship, health challenges, and major life transitions herself, she knows that most people aren't looking for perfection. They're looking for practical ways to feel better, live better, and reconnect with themselves. So today we'll explore healing, resilience, Ayurveda, the lessons that health challenges can teach us, and how we can pursue our ambitions without sacrificing our well-being along the way. So, grab a chair, take a deep breath, and join us for what promises to be a fascinating conversation. Shveta, welcome to Shifts and Giggles.
Hi, Beth. It is always so fun to see you, to talk to you. And I mean that because, it could be a Monday morning, it could be end of Friday after a really tiring week. There's something about you. There's this energy which really shifts what people are going through. So if they need
Oh,
more light, you shift them towards that. And if they need to little bit mellow down, you'll shift them towards that. So it's a very, I know malleable is not the word I'd use for energy, but with you, it is and it's very, very healing. So I'm super excited to be talking to you.
yay! Thank you so much for that. I think it's all my years of energy healing that helped me
Mm.
do that. Um, so what have you learned on your own healing journey?
Oh, that's a loaded question. And how many hours do we got here? Um, the one big thing that especially 2026 has taught me that you have to be your own advocate. So for a
Mm,
lot of women, I'll start with my mom. Like when she thought self-care, it meant a facial, getting a massage, right? For my generation, a lot of women think, oh, it's like spa day with your girlfriends or dinner and drinks. And yes, all of that is great, but it's more physical and superficial and it's not long lasting.
right, exactly. We tend to think of self-care as pampering.
Yes, and materialism, like I'll indulge myself. But it
Right.
starts with self-advocacy, and that could look physical, emotional, mental. And I can say this as a woman, I'm type A, high pitta in Ayurveda speak, which is, I am very driven and ambitious, and I love all of that. But I also have the kapha, the love, the warmth, the need for steadiness. And when self-care takes a back seat, I go into imbalance. What that means is the pitta could be really high up there. I might be achieving, but also burning out. Like
Ah,
the sharp tongue, and we all know that one family member or cousin or uncle, aunt, or friend who's judgmental. So not all of those qualities, but some of those qualities, like I know I can be very self-critical. Yeah, if you don't love yourself, you can't love others. So
that's for sure.
right. So for me, that self-advocacy for really pausing and asking yourself, what do I need today? But also, where do I need to look at the mirror and tell myself, yeah, I need a reality check. So that honesty is all part of self-care.
Absolutely, 100%. So you're bringing up some Ayurvedic terms that I think that people might not necessarily understand. So I'd love to like if you're talking to somebody who's hearing about Ayurveda for the first time, what What do they need to understand about that? And what is the most life-changing concept that they should understand?
Okay, so Ayurveda is an ancient, and Beth mentioned this in the introduction. It's an ancient healing wisdom which is over 5,000 years old. It's the oldest medical system. So there are Ayurvedic hospitals in India where I had to go back and do internships, stay in the hospital where diet and lifestyle and plant medicine is how you cure people.
What a radical concept that's
Right.
5,000 years old.
Right. And I am a child of science. I have a sports nutrition background and I like everything to be evidence-based. And that was so much evidence where we witnessed over 3.5 weeks, a man who had paralysis had started to walk. And
Wow.
Western science had given up on him. They were like, we've done the treatment for 2 months, we've done this, we've done that. And the Ayurvedic hospital was, no, we are not giving up. And sometimes there's no ego. It's like, yeah, it's like if it's a terminal stage with a disease, Ayurveda will say, I wish we could, but I'm sorry we can't help. Like it is trauma, it is Western medicine, it should have been done yesterday. So, what this means is Ayurveda is the science of life. Ayu means life, Veda means science. It's the science of life. So, how you eat, how you move, whom you talk to, your social connections, everything will impact your well being. And why is that? Because the mind, body, and consciousness are connected. So I'll give you an example like Beth, like during the pandemic, I don't know about others, but I know many New Yorkers because I live in the city and we couldn't, you couldn't drive to places. Even in the apartment building, we were using toothpicks to press the elevator
Oh
button.
my goodness.
Masks,
Yeah.
they said don't use masks at the start because we didn't have enough and we definitely wanted to save them for the essential workers. So how do you get groceries? You couldn't go to the grocery store, so you're relying on online methodologies. Now, nobody in the world was prepared for this onslaught of everybody ordering everything online. So it almost was like a lotto system. You had one app opened here, one on something else, then there's a chain text. Guys, Instacart opened up, you can order groceries. But then there was a minimum for people who, like, as an Ayurvedic doctor, I buy fresh groceries at least thrice a week. I'm not
Right.
used to, and an apartment dweller, I don't have the space. So now all of a sudden, if I had to buy something, and this is prior to the pandemic, $250 could buy you a lot of things.
That's
Today
right.
it's nothing, unfortunately. So I'm like, I was eyeing pecan pies and ice cream, things I which I wouldn't use. I was like, if I'm going to die, I'm going to face down in pecan pie. But what that did was on the third day of eating that, I was like, oh, I am so resilient. And I was so optimistic. Despite all of this, I started to see my mood changed, started to feel a little bit low. And I like to be physically very active, and I'm grateful that I can do that. I didn't want to step out. And so, see what happens? 80% of the second brain is your belly.
Right.
So, what you eat, what I ate, it's a two-way street. That's the message my brain was getting: sugar, sugar, sugar. There was no nutrient. And what I was thinking was, oh my God, crisis anxiety. Let's eat more pecan pie. And so, it's such a beautiful science, the science of life. I stopped. I was like, oh my God, I'm going to kill myself. Like, if I continue to do that. And what a terrible choice. What a privilege to be alive and breathing. Right. And so
Yeah.
that shift to me is the simple example of Ayurveda, science of life, mind, body, consciousness. There's all a connection. So it's not just what we eat, what you consume, whom you're talking to, how you commute, what you read. Everything will impact your well being.
I love that. So what's the simplest thing somebody can do to change their life from your perspective?
Learn to pause. Ask yourself, we are so used to numbing ourselves or
Mm,
not, sometimes numbing, sometimes not holding space. Again, I was like, it feels frivolous or feels entitled, like, oh, I can hold space for a pet or a partner or children or parents or friends. But as a woman, especially, like, no, I can go on. Just because you can doesn't mean you need to.
that's true.
So, and that's the start of burnout. So, like, checking in with yourself. Just because you love pad thai every day, if you don't love it today, you didn't become a horrible person. You're allowed to change your mind. It's the same thing. Just because you run a marathon, you run 5K every day. If your body is telling you something feels off, I'm tired, listen to it. If you're going to a holiday gathering and there's one family member who triggers you, it's okay to acknowledge that, find an accountability buddy. We live in a world we've been told extreme things. Don't go anywhere, stay on your own. No, that's impacting your mental health as well.
Right.
When you live in awareness, you will know, you will start to develop this habit of getting uncomfortable and then getting comfortable in that discomfort and say, this doesn't work for me. And when you speak from that place of calm, you're not going to be lashing out at yourself or anybody else.
Yeah, it's really important to find that middle ground for yourself, right?
Yes, yes,
And to
yes.
pause, like you said, to pause.
I was talking to a colleague the other day, a friend at work, and I said, we've been told self-care is those candles, a bubble bath, pour a glass of wine, chai, whatever it is that you like, cancel the plans that you need to. But with this kind of cancellation culture, not cancel culture, but the cancellation culture, we are isolating ourselves. Yes, sometimes you might be really tired. Again, when you pause, you will know, am I being tired or am I just being fussy right now? And sometimes we become an obstacle in our own way. And you have to tell yourself, I know when I go there, I'll have fun. It's just that inertia. But then you could,
Absolutely. That happens to me all the time because I'm an introvert and I'm just like, oh no, I don't want to do that thing that I thought was going to be so much fun a week ago. I'm just going to stay home.
right? Or even the group that you run, TLC group. The number of times people say, I almost didn't show up today, and then I did. And I'm like 100 times better for it. So it's when you pause, you know, is this coming from, I just don't want to because it's not my inherent nature or a myriad of issues? Or is it, things really feel tight. I have nothing to add to the conversation. I might not be my best today, and these might not be the closest friends, they're colleagues. I want to show up as a version. You tell yourself the story that you need, but when you'll pause, you'll be honest about it.
Yeah, I love that. Radical honesty with yourself.
Mhm. Easy, right? And that's
Much easier.
Ayurveda, and that's yoga, and that's any healing modality. Radical honesty. How can you heal if you will not accept you need healing? How can you heal when you will not embrace the fact that rest does not need to be earned? So it's also shifting that narrative that we have around self-care and healing.
That's huge. Talk to me about grief because I know you do a lot of work with grief. And
So
how do people hold grief in their bodies?
in so many different ways. So I wanted to share this book. It's called The Loss That Binds Us. It came out 3 years ago. And when people ask me about grief, I'll tell like, no one wakes up and says, I'll do grief work, right?
Nobody.
Nobody. And if they did, ooh, I want to have that conversation. Like, to be have that calling is huge. See, for me, the way I look at it is grief is your response to any kind of loss. Yes, I wrote this book after I lost my dad and my father-in-law 2 days apart,
Wow.
unexpectedly, around my mom's ninth death anniversary. So it was a freak show, is what I'll say, last week of May, 3 years ago, right? But it was also because I couldn't find something that was real and relatable for me. Everything was so cerebral. So many books were about, you'll be on the other side, but what if I don't want to right now? I am just grieving one of the most important relationships in my life, which was with my dad. Don't tell me to be okay.
Right.
Just tell me how to breathe today. And it's okay if I don't want to breathe for 5 seconds and then I'll come up gasping for air. So that's why I think I got into grief because I just didn't realize or couldn't find something that was simple. This book has 108 tips because 108 is an important number in spirituality. I was raised in a Hindu home. In Hinduism, in Christianity, in Judaism, and Islam, all religions, in Buddhism, they touch upon the number 108. So I'm like, I'm not bringing religion to you. I'm not bringing spirituality to you. I'm just sharing 108 tips that have helped me. Open the book depending on where you are in your life and in your grieving journey. You'll find something because I'm not trying to be wise. I was just trying to survive. And to me, that's what is grief. Don't label it. Don't tell people whose grief matters more. Can we not have a comparison and
Oh,
hierarchy?
comparison of grief.
And
Yikes.
hierarchy. Yeah, like we lost my dad and then my father-in-law, and people trying to tell us how my mom-in-law's grief mattered more. And I'm like, she's not saying that. Who are you? But also, that's so tacky because I think people don't realize silence is also a form of support in grief. They feel they have to say something, that we have to compare whose grief matters. And I'd already lost my mom very early on in life. Now, losing my dad, it changed so many things. But my grief is just as important as my husband's grief, as my brother's grief, as my mother-in-law's grief, or my husband's sister's grief. So can we just hold space for ourselves and others instead of, like pitting people against each other?
Yes, absolutely 100%. And grief comes in lots of forms. It's not necessarily just the loss of a physical person in your life.
Exactly. And that's the other aspect. Like it's a response to any kind of loss, change in health. I have a client who said to me, Shweta, I literally couldn't step out of the house for a year. And when my friends would see me, they would be like, oh, you look great. So you've already dismissed me, right?
Yes,
Just because you don't see bruises and marks or tears, because it's invisible, you've just dismissed me. When a relationship ends, and I'm not just saying romantic, a friendship that you
absolutely.
thought would be someone who would be giving that, talk at your funeral, that person is no longer a part of your life. That is grief. Loss of a job, loss of a situation. And sure, the impact of grief would be different, but to that individual, the grief matters so much. Can we not dismiss it by saying my grief matters more?
Absolutely. And it can be even just the loss of a dream,
Yes.
whatever reason.
100%. Absolutely. And it sounds, some people think it sounds trivial. I don't think it does. When someone is applying for a promotion, you are 22, your perspective of life is very different from an 82-year-old. For you, that is the most devastating thing. And what a blessing that you've not seen other devastations at 22, right? So why should this person feel, oh, my grief doesn't matter? Like, I remember during the pandemic, my younger niece, she was in high school. Um, these kids didn't get a graduation. They didn't get to go away on the trip as all high school graduates. She was like, I'm so grateful for. I was like, zip it. You're allowed to be angry for what you didn't get. Because again, when you show up as your real authentic self, owning your grief, this sucks. I wish this shouldn't have happened. Then you can say, "Ah, but I'm so grateful that I have these other things."
Well,
You know,
grief and gratitude kind of go ha hand in hand, I feel
yeah,
like.
but you can't just
No, you can't
dive
just
to the
go to
deep end
gratitude.
of like, ooh, grateful.
Yeah, that's spiritual bypassing. So,
Yeah, and that's a short circuit. You'll bounce around and you'll make yourself sick and maybe like others as well. So I'm like, just take space. And I think the other thing with grief work is I've realized that our world, and it's not one culture, society, just the world we live in, people lack patience. Anxiety disorders, ADHD, all of that is on a rise because we are used to dopamine shots of reels that we watch on YouTube or Instagram, anywhere. We don't have the capacity for long form content or emotions. So I've had like, so you must be doing okay. Now, again, you've dismissed me.
how about asking you, how are you doing?
Exactly. I have a client who thought she was doing okay, but 5 years later, at Christmas, she was in a puddle of tears because something triggered the memory of the parent that she'd lost. So that's the thing with there is no timeline, and you think you could be doing well. And one music, one scent, one conversation, one aroma, and you could be like, God, 10 years
Yes.
back is where you go. So it's just and I'm not morbid by nature, so I'm not saying, oh, you'll never get better. I'm just saying you will learn to cope better with every passing day. But grief, whether it's a situation or a relationship or the loss of a loved one or a health, what he knew as reality has changed. So how can you be the same person? So how can you be expected to have the same responses that you did when your life situation was different? So if as human beings we could understand this simple yet nuanced concept, people will stop dismissing others. We are so impatient, like it's
So impatient.
so impatient, like, oh, but it's been 3 years. Why wouldn't you go to Thanksgiving? For some people, they might never go because you know what? Even they might not be aware they're still grieving. We are working from that assumption that everybody knows that they're grieving. No, no, no. You might not know your career ended. Like I have friends who are older than me and they're facing women, especially ageism on a whole other level in corporate America. So they're grieving, but they don't even know they're grieving. And we are expecting them to show up to these conferences feeling all gung ho and high on caffeine and whatever, croissants in the morning, when they're still grieving something that didn't get a funeral. See, when we lose a loved one or a pet, we get a funeral. Most people, it's a whole other conversation about poverty where people don't get that. And but I'm talking about in a large majority of cases, when you lose a loved one, there's a funeral. But when you lose your health, you lose a relationship, you lose a job, you don't get a funeral. So there is
That's
grief
true.
without a funeral. And then loss of a loved one in terms of a friend. I've lost three friends this year, right? And you're carrying around that grief because your grief doesn't hold space. And it's not a complaint, it's just facts. And I'm
Right.
thinking more about it because an editor commissioned me to write about this. And this disenfranchised grief. What is a friend's place when there's a partner, children, and parents involved? So your grief is minimized. You might get
Absolutely.
1 minute at a funeral, if at all, but and again, no judgment and no complaints. But so the grief is so complicated. So this friend who never got to grieve or say a few words or was told, yes, we see how that matters to you, their grief is going to go on for in a more complicated way for a longer period of time.
Right, because it's not as acknowledged.
Exactly. Oh, we
Yeah.
can go on and on about grief,
We
right?
could talk about grief forever.
Right.
Don't you have a program or a talk about grief?
Yeah, so next week on June 17th, I am giving a talk. It's free, Grief in the Workplace. Because when grieving employees show up and no one is holding space for them, they might not even know that they are grieving. Corporations need to know they're losing out billions of dollars in that. But as human beings, heart-centered businesses, we need to know how can we help people like this. I also offer grief coaching, which is rooted in Ayurveda. I am not a therapist. I am not a psychologist. There is a very important place for those professionals, mental health professionals. But what I do is Ayurveda will recognize what is that imbalance. There are three doshas. What is that imbalance? How can we use diet and lifestyle to move the needle just a little bit until you're ready to get to therapy?
I love that.
It's very holistic, it's very wholesome. And I've had psychiatrists do that with me. Like they've signed up for my coaching. So like, oh, okay. Yeah, I could go, I could be down with that. But I'm like, this is not a replacement for therapy. But also knowing that not everyone is ready for talk therapy. Not everyone wants to only do emotions. With Ayurveda, we're talking about the mind body consciousness connection. So it's not just mental, it's emotional, it's physical, it's your diet, your lifestyle. So for a lot of men, I realize they might not want to talk emotions. But if you make that shift in the diet and lifestyle, you start to heal. And when that
Right.
happens, they might be more open to seeing a therapist.
Yeah, I love that. I love that you have that Ayurveda provides that, and that through coaching with you, you can find simple but very effective ways of transforming your health and making those holy shifts, right?
Yes, thank you. It's the body. It's not me, Beth. It's this ancient wisdom. The body knows how to heal if we allow it to heal. If we pay attention to the signs. The body screams when we don't listen to when it mellows at the start. When it tells you, hey, I need help. The mind tells you, I'm not doing okay. But we think we'll push through. But again, with Ayurveda, the beauty is there's compassion. Some people will want to push through and burn out. Some people get anxious, others get depressed and lack of motivation. So we start recognizing what is that imbalance and how the diet and lifestyle can shift that imbalance. So once the imbalance gets better, you come back to where you need to be.
I
Healing
love
is
that.
already happening.
Yeah. What would you say to somebody who says, I know I should get better care of myself, but I don't have time?
If you're on social media, you're definitely scrolling for more than 10 minutes a day. You have the time. but it doesn't have to be a performance. I think that's the language that we need to change around healing. People think if they need to get fit, they need to sign up for a triathlon. Just walk for 10 minutes a day. When you walk, you will notice you release stress. Even when Beth and I are talking, if you just moved your shoulders, this releases stress. Simple things. Take your glasses out, cover your, palm your eyes. It releases stress. So we can start small. Start with 5 minutes, 7 minutes, 10 minutes. Then add those 10 minutes every 4 hours a day. I am that Indian who doesn't do math. So go figure out how many minutes that adds up to. But I tell you, at the end of the day, you would have done 60 minutes of exercise.
That's amazing. It's incremental changes that can
And
have the
it's
biggest effect.
absolutely, and it's always the small shifts that lead to incremental changes, small habits. But again, bring in, we both you and I are healers and we work with energy. It's be kind to yourself.
Yeah.
So what if you had that extra helping of pie? If it happens 5 days in a row, it's a whole other problem. But if it happened one week and you're happy with your friends, you drank that extra glass of wine, it's okay. Tomorrow is a new day. So instead of spending your time on what cannot be rectified, which is the past, or worrying about this is what happens, I'll never get better, the future, stay in the present moment. While you're listening in, I invite you to bring your shoulder blades to your ears and inhale. And when you exhale, gently bring your shoulder back down. Three of these in both directions. I promise you something shifts, whatever the shift you need for it to be. While we're doing the interview, these are three from my end. I invite you to do the same for yourself.
Me too. Well, it is, I mean, it goes back to the beginning of our conversation when it was all about pausing.
And paying attention. We have been told, especially as women, there's this guilt about saying, I need this. I've battled that too. I still do on some days. I'm getting better. And when I'm getting better, it's an announcement. I need to let my girlfriends know, hey, I did that. Uh, but you know what? I'll take it. It's better than not taking care.
That's right.
And, if you have little kids, you have a pet, if you have elderly parents, if you have a partner, none of those, if you have a friend you care about, right? How is it that we able to make time for them? How is it that we able to cook for them? How is it that we able to check in on them? Why can't we offer ourselves the same love and care? Why can't we just turn inward for 5 minutes? Hey Beth, how are you doing? Hey Shweta, how are you doing? Just check in. And I'm not saying it has to be so dramatic where you talk to yourself. On the subway, it's a great tip because people
I
will
love
leave
that
this.
as a tool.
Yeah, like they'll leave that, oh, that's a crazy lady. Let's just let her sit, right? But I'm just saying, just check in with yourself. You deserve that. You're worthy of the love that you give others.
So true. So true. I love that. Thank you so much for chatting with me today. Is there anything else you'd like people to know?
Just, you're worth it. So take care of yourself. Whatever care means to you on a given day, right? But just make sure it's accessible, make sure it's affordable, just make sure it doesn't trigger you. And you'll find that out when you experiment with what self-care means to you. But if it becomes a habit, like what Beth said, incremental, then you will not want to. If I don't move, some days it's 90 minutes, some days it's 10 minutes, but I know if I can move, I'm a happier person. If I'm happier, I'm a better partner, I'm better in my relationships, I'm better with my clients. Who doesn't want to be good and kind? So the kindness starts with you is my only reminder to everyone.
I love that. Where can people find you?
My website. So it's shwetavikram.com. You go on there, you'll find about my Ayurvedic coaching, grief coaching. If you're looking for speakers, I have a podcast. You can listen to it. It's all about Ayurveda and leadership and how you can lead from a place of balance. You don't have to be bouncing. Articles. If you're curious about Ayurveda, I have a lot of blog posts up there. Connect with me on socials. I am pretty chatty.
I love that about you. And you've also written like what, 17 books?
You're very kind. 15.
Okay, well, I bet 17 by the end of the year.
Oh, thank you. From your mouth to the Publishing God is yours.
Thank you so much, Veda. It's always an honor to be with you.
Likewise, Beth, it is such joy. You to me equals joy. So
Oh,
thank you for being the joy and light for so many of us in the world.
thank you. Everybody, stay tuned for the next episode.